Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 85, Different Kinds of Healthy Love. So of course, since it's February, this month we're going to talk all about love. We're going to get into the many different types of love, like we will today, what I mean by healthy love, what unhealthy love looks like, and how to put the wonderful healthy love into practice more in your life. As we go through the month, we'll compare and contrast healthy versions of love versus unhealthy, aka control and toxicity and things like that. So, a long time ago, the Greeks came up with several types of love. We're going to go over some of them here today, not all of them. And like anything else, there are great things about each type of love, and ways we can actually end up being unhealthy about it. All right, so as you listen today, my hope is that you can discern between what are some healthy aspects and things that we need in our love relationships and some unhealthy things, which basically have the underpinnings of fear, like we've talked about several times on the show. The first one, and I think we've all heard of this one, is Eros. Love of the body. This is sexual attraction, physical desire, being drawn towards someone. You see a lot of this in the movies where that instant infatuation and romantic love comes to mind. So Eros is more about sexual desire and physical attraction and chemistry between two people. What's healthy is this can be a start of a great romantic relationship. It's a great way to explore passion and connectivity with another person. However, it can burn out after a while. It can get old, and it's difficult for it to sustain a long-term relationship, because a long-term relationship requires deeper levels and more meaningful friendship bonds and connections and shared values. The other way Eros can be seen as unhealthy is a lack of control. When you think of folks who have multiple partners or are leaning towards a sexual addiction, they sexualize intimacy with another person. And sex is first and foremost on the brain. It's very important. And it can be seen, when you zoom out, as a little shallow and empty and not really fulfilling past the moment, right? So that's Eros. The next one is Philia, and that is affectionate love. And I got some of this from some websites that I put into the show notes. If you want to read more, you can. So Philia accounts for the type of love they say, like you have your parents and your siblings and your family members and your close friends. This is linked, they say, with loyalty, trust, companionship, service to one another. I thought this was interesting. This is true. It is shared among those who have similar values and experiences. So if you think of a family, a cultural group, a church group, a support group, where those folks have similar values and bonding experiences, where they can really connect, relate to each other, and feel safe with one another. I think this kind of love is important and not talked about enough. I think, especially in American culture, we historically have focused way too much on romantic love at the expense of other types of very important love. Because I think for identity, for belongingness and connection, we all need these relationships. If you don't believe me, think of people who join cults and gangs. Those things would not exist if we did not need that sense of belongingness and strong identity to something bigger than ourselves to feel okay. Now, as long as you don't continually put the group's needs above and ahead of your own all the time at your own expense, it's a good, healthy thing. It can really help one's self-esteem to belong to someone or some group that they can feel proud of and they feel a part of and they matter. And people care when they're gone. People care when they're hurting, that type of thing. Another type of love is storge. Love of the child, it's called. If you're a parent or an aunt and uncle, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There can be nothing at times more fervent and powerful and or heartbreaking, right? I think there's a deep sense of responsibility and connection, especially with biological children, that you feel. And I think perhaps maybe that is instinctual. The good thing about this is we feed and love our kids, right? And we try to give them the best that we can give, and we care about their welfare, and we love and protect them and take care of them and guide them and nurture them. However, if there's too much of this, it can blind a parent to the realities of what might be going on with the child, aka lack of boundaries. And so storge is huge. I've seen some places where it's believed it's there for the survival of the species. So if we're not aware, we can let this get in the way of seeing the truth about our child's behavior, let's say. And again, it's about us, right? Because if they're not okay, then we must have messed something up in our parenting along the way. That's storge. Agape love is another one we've heard of, and oftentimes it is used in religious circles, but I don't think it has to be just that. I call it a love for humanity, a selfless love. We don't want to see others suffer. It's what we feel when we forgive. It's the love that accepts and the love that believes in the greater good. It can be compared to altruism, is what I was reading, the principle and moral practice of concern for happiness of other human beings or animals. And they said resulting in quality of life, both material and spiritual. So agape love, you care about people. You care what happens in society. I think we're seeing a lot of this year and last year with the pandemic and with social justice movements that are happening, to where our consciousness has been raised a little bit, perhaps, to think of people struggling even in other countries that we care about. We want good for others. We don't want to see this many people suffering, including ourselves, but not just ourselves. So agape love, I think, personally, requires some emotional maturity. I think it requires a lack of selfishness where we're only worried about what we get and what's good for us and what's going to happen for us. It's not that we don't care about ourselves. It's just that we care about others as well. And that we may factor that into our value decisions and our behavior, knowing that our choices can affect another person. I think with pandemic, it's very interesting. The sociologist in me says, wow, especially in America, a very individualistic society, I'm really big on personal boundaries, you know that. However, it's fascinating where just my decision whether or not to wear a mask and or knowingly infect others, or instead consider not just the person in the grocery store I may happen to run into, but what about their grandmother living at home? So it's fascinating. It's that almost one-to-many relationship that we can have and not even realize it. So whether we believe in interconnectedness or not, I think when it comes to science and disease, boy, isn't that showing up. It's there whether we want to look at it or not, I think. Again, personal opinion. One of the downsides of agape love is martyrdom, right? Martyrdom for the principle. It may be deemed as acceptable, but it's not psychologically healthy, okay? Especially if you have to do something for society at the expense of your own welfare. That's not good. The next one is ludus, playful love, flirty, a great way to start a romantic relationship, right? That leads to mature love. A great way, I think, to learn how to own your sexuality and be proud of it and be comfortable with it, to take a risk in a relationship. And Wikipedia, it was interesting, it says, ludic lovers want to have as much fun as possible. They rarely or never become overly involved with one partner, and often can have more than one partner at a time. They don't reveal their true thoughts and feelings to their partner. If a relationship materializes, it can be about having fun and indulging activities of varying degrees of learning this together. And it says, this love style carries the likelihood of infidelity. And boy, have I sat with this so many times over the years working with couples. You got it. And with this one as well, in its most extreme form, Wikipedia says, ludic love can become sexual addiction. Yeah. It's all about having fun, and it's all about taking risks, and it's not about reality. I think it keeps people from commitment. If they're playing around, they can't commit. And therefore, if they don't commit, they're not vulnerable, and they can't be abandoned. That's a whole nother episode. But I think you get the sense of what I mean by that. We don't commit because we're scared. Conversely, pragma, which is long-lasting love, is the mature love that has grown over time. Think of deep bonds, long-term friendships, shared meaning, have been married 40 years. It says that pragmatic lovers have a notion of being of service, and they also look at the relationship as rational and realistic. Maybe their partner is someone who is dependable and they can count on them. And there are agreements made between the two people to be committed and stay committed. And these are people who are pretty good partners, right? They carry their weight. They make good business decisions together. They support one another. They help each other out. So there are expectations of the partner and of the relationship. But people looking for a pragmatic relationship often tend to, it says, select and reject partners based on what they perceive as desirable, compatible traits, right? They want to find value in their partners, and they will ultimately want to work with their partner to reach a common goal. Okay, so it's very realistic and pragmatic. However, it can be like utilitarian a little bit. So if you do have a pragmatic relationship that is also comprised of really loving who the other person is and having great chemistry and playfulness and attraction, you can learn how to make compromises, demonstrate patience with one another, and tolerance to make the relationship work. And then hopefully this is a relationship that grows you up on the inside and grows them up. Good relationships help us grow. Remember, not just one person, but both people. So that is, I think, something for us to aspire to, whether it's our marriages, our long-term partnerships, or our really close friendships over the years. How mature is it? Is it just utilitarian, or are we vulnerable and connected in loving ways as well? So the last one is philautia, the love of the self. And we're going to spend an episode this month talking about loving you. And healthy means we take good care of ourselves. We focus on our self-care. That includes self-discipline, remember? Giving ourselves a break, self-love, self-nurturing, maybe some deep work with a counselor or a coach around healing and really honoring who we are. Taking care of ourselves in our relationships. Taking care of stuff that is our responsibility. Now, you can swing this to the unhealthy with selfishness. And I think I look at selfishness as immaturity, emotional immaturity, where there's a little bit of ignorance of the impact of your behavior on others. There's the myopic that we've mentioned here many times, where deep down there's so much pain and you feel like a victim, and in some ways you probably were a true victim and you never worked through and grieved that. So it's really hard to look out there and truly have empathy and compassion for others, to really be able to have the ego strength to take responsibility for your behavior, like really, and own it, and not put it on other people via manipulation. You often see a direct correlation between emotional immaturity and manipulative behavior. Mature people don't manipulate. They have no desire. They're disgusted by it. They want others to do well, too. They want to build others up, not tear them down, while they're building their self up. All right, so those are the types of love. Now, a lot of articles I looked at mentioned mania, which I thought was very interesting. Anxiety about falling in love, expecting pain, getting overwhelmed, being obsessed with someone, with your partner, being controlling, forcing a partner into showing affection and emotion, possessive, jealous. There's lots of traits here. that are basically about control if you think about it. I mean, I have a hard time thinking that that's a form of love. It may be sold as a form of love, but love is not fear. Love is the opposite of fear. They don't coexist well in a relationship for very long. Most of the relationships that I work with have a lot of fear-based problems, and that's what we have to work on. Because love requires vulnerability and maturity so we can experience it at its deepest, most profound levels, I think. I think you got to do some serious work to get there. And boy, is it worth it. And both people have to be willing to get there. Wisdom comes from experience, learning things the hard way sometimes. You know that. Love is the opposite of control, which we'll get into a bit more this month. Control is fear. Fear of letting go, fear of surrendering to what is, fear of not having control of all the variables, of the situation, of other people. Boy, is that bought and paid for. When you talk to someone with control issues long enough, and you find out deep down way back when, there are very good reasons why they're terrified. Terrified to be vulnerable, to trust, to be open, to let go of the outcome, to trust themselves, to learn how to slowly trust trustworthy people, to have boundaries instead of having to control. I mean, love is about freedom. It's about freedom to choose, freedom to allow others to have their choices, and it's about boundaries, knowing where you end and others begin. When there's lots of choice in a relationship, love can grow. Without it, when there's enmeshment, when there's manipulation and control and toxicity, love will die. Especially the love for yourself. I can guarantee you, you will lose who you are in that kind of relationship. I've never seen it not happen. Real love is authentic, I think, without manipulative agendas or selfishness or emotional immaturity. It's about owning my choices. Who do I want to be in this relationship? Who do I want to connect with in terms of the other in that relationship? What kind of love do I want to share with that person? What is appropriate? And hopefully I have different kinds of relationships. I have a romantic one. I have agape ones. I love myself, and I have connections with friends and family that are deep and meaningful and profound, and I nurture them and they nurture me and continue to help me grow. All right, so those are some different types of love, and also the focus primarily on this month, what is healthy love versus unhealthy love? And there are so many pieces to this, and we probably won't get to everything this month, but my hope is that it gets you thinking. Speaking of getting you thinking, I'd like to take some time now and do what I call thought provokers. Some questions to throw out at you, just to see what comes up, see what resonates, see what hits your heart. Maybe you're already working on this stuff. You've made a lot of progress, or maybe you haven't even thought about this. You can be anywhere on this continuum. So ideally, you're in a place where you have pen and paper and what have you. But if you're walking, if you're driving, that's all right. Just see what comes up in your heart. I will have this in the bonus download for the episode. You can print it out later and take it even deeper. All right, you ready? Number 1. When you think about it, like how many different kinds of love can you identify in your life? How many different kinds, from eros to agape, self-love, philia? Okay, how many different kinds do you think you have? Number 2, where do you see where you might be lacking in terms of giving attention to a type of love or a person in your life, perhaps? And what has gotten in the way lately, do you think? So where might you be lacking in terms of giving attention, energy, spending time with that person or group of people, being open, being real, being authentic, like really being present? Like what's gotten in the way of that for you lately? For some of us, it could be COVID. It could be time. It could be we're busy. Something changed in our life. Maybe now we have a new job. We have kids. We have health issues. Or maybe something's going on in the relationship that you have not addressed yet. If you've been listening to all these episodes, my guess is you're getting healthier, and that might be a problem. All right. Number 3. Are there relationships in your life right now that are starting to seem a bit unhealthy? Like you're noticing, like maybe a little martyrdom, either on your part or their part. Some obsessiveness? Maybe a lack of commitment, poor boundaries. Maybe the more you realize, you see them as perhaps emotionally abusive and or toxic. Now that your head is a little clearer and you have some contrast. So what relationships right now are starting to seem a bit unhealthy to you? Okay, and number 4, where have you experienced along the way authentic, deep, lasting love, regardless of what kind? Sit with this for a moment. I want you to relish the feelings and or the images that come up. And think about why it felt or feels this way. Authentic, deep, lasting love. Like deep caring and nurturing and vulnerability, really. Vulnerable connections with others. That could have been when you were 5 years old. Could have been 5 minutes ago. Okay, so what came up for you as I asked you these questions? I encourage you to write some of them down if you can, because I believe what resonates is where we need to focus right now, because the process unfolds for you, not because of you. It's showing up for a reason, either to confirm some work you've been doing or already done, or to get your attention around some work that maybe needs to happen soon. All right, so this month we're going to get into healthy versus unhealthy love, which for some of you may be new and others might just be a refresher or a sad reminder. We're going to finish up the month to talk about your love for life, because I think that is important in order to feel alive and to really love yourself and to love those people around you. You know this intellectually. And we know this when we're on the other side of it. It is so much nicer to be around people who have a wonderful love for life, who are realistic but optimistic. And they're hopeful, and they're solution focused, and they're open, and they have passion and determination, and they're curious, and they want to learn, and they're not afraid. All right, so today we talked all about the Greeks' definitions of different types of love, how we can experience them in healthy and unhealthy ways. We looked at your own relationships to see maybe where you are with those. But most importantly, as we go through this month, I want you to focus on loving yourself a bit more. Because as you discover some truths here, whether it's with our topic of love this month or other episodes in the podcast, remember to grab the context. Because some of this, in terms of how you got here, is probably not your fault. And your loving responsibility, if you choose to take on the mission, to heal and make it better and get it healthier. That's why I do this work, because I think there is so much changeable stuff that we can do to change our lives in profound ways, to change our self-esteem, to increase our confidence, to have healthier relationships, better work experiences, to be an integral and powerful part of the larger community and of humanity. All right, so thank you for joining me today. Continue to stay healthy, stay as grounded as you can, look forward and hold on to hope. Love you this week. Find moments when you can express authentic love to those around you. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com if you need to sign up for the newsletter. If you got the newsletter today, then you already have the bonus download. And I encourage you to do some writing on the exercise this week and see what continues to come up for you. My old mentor used to say, Mary, it's all about relationships. That's where all the questions are, all the answers, and all the work. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.